Namaskar. Hello aspiring minds. Welcome to the class on Assamese consonant letter clusters. In Assamese, like in many other Indian scripts derived from Brahmi, we can combine two or more consonant letters together to form new compound characters. These are called Juktaikar in Assamese. In this class, we will explore one of the most important aspects of the Assamese script called Juktaikar, that means consonant letter clusters. We have already come across 41 consonant letters in the previous lesson on the introduction to the Assamese alphabet. Most of them combine with one another to form two-letter clusters. There are more than 150 two-letter consonant clusters in Assamese. As we all know, Juktaikar are combinations of two or more consonant letters that form unique linguistic units or elements in Assamese writing and pronunciation. Let's discover why they are essential and how to master them. So, let me tell you how clusters can be defined. Juktaikar simply means conjoined consonant letters. In Assamese, you will often find letters merged to create new sounds. When two consonant letters appear together without a vowel between them, the first consonant loses its inherent O sound and combines with the second consonant. This creates a cluster. The formation process, particularly in Assamese, is discussed here. Step 1. The preceding consonant letter changes into its combining form, that is, without the inherent vowel O pronounced after it. And step 2. The following consonant also changes into its combining form. Step 3. The consonants combine together. Step 4. The combination is a new, often visually distinct character. Usually, the preceding consonant occurs at the left or top of the following consonant in a two-letter consonant cluster. For example, the combination of ka and ta is kaitakta. The combination of ma and ra is mairamra. The combination of ga and la is gailagla. These clusters are different from individual consonants. Let me show you some of the most frequently used two-letter clusters in Assamese. Let us start with the clusters starting with ka. Ka and ka, kaikak ka. For example, Makkah, that is Mecca city of Saudi Arabia. Ka and ta, kaitak ta. For example, Hakti, that means energy. Ka and murdhanya ha, kya. For example, Raikha, which means protection. Ka and ra, kairak ra. For example, Sakra, that means wheel. Now, let us have a group of consonant letter clusters starting with ta. Ta and ta, ta. For example, uttar, that means north or answer. Ta and ra, ra. For example, patra, which means letter or leaf. Ta and ma, taimatma. For example, atma, that means soul. In another group, let us have some clusters starting with na. Na and ta, night and ta. For example, anta, that means and. Na and da, night and da. For example, ananda, that means joy. Na and tha, night and tha. For example, bandha, which means closed or bound. Now, let us have some clusters starting with na. Ngo juk ko, ngoi kang ko, for example, angka, that means mathematics. Ngo juk ko, ngoi kang ko, for example, hongko, that means conch shell. Ngo juk go, ngoi kang go, for example, angka, which means organ. Ngo juk ko, ngoi kang ko, for example, hongko, which means association. Now, let us pick up some clusters with po as the final or following letter. Mo and po, moi pam po, for example, parampara. Parampara means tradition. Ho and po, hoi pes po, for example, sposto, that means clear. Lo and po, loi pel po, for example, golpo, which means story. Murdhanya ho and po, hoi pes po, for example, puspo, that means flower. Again, let us have some more commonly used clusters such as ho and to, hoites to, for example, hosto, which means hand. Po and ro, poire pro, for example, prem, which means love. Bo and do, boideap do, for example, hobdo, which means sound or word. Talepo ho and pratham sa, hoishesha, for example, nichoy, that means sure. Dainta no, juk, dainta tho, naidhan tho, for example, antha, which means blind. Murdhanya ho and murdhanya no, hoines no, for example, Krishna, that means Krishna. Taloipa ho and ra, hoires ra, for example, Sreni, which means class. Pho and ontostoya, pho, for example, hoipho, that means civilized. Po and lo, poilap lo, for example, biplav, which means revolution. Murdhanya no and murdhanya no, noinan no, for example, bihonno, that means sad or depressed. Jo and wabo, joywasbo, for example, joy, which means favor. Zo and yo, ya, for example, gyan, that means knowledge. Pratham sa and ditya sa, saishasha, for example, issa, which means desire. Dainta no and dainta tho, naithan tho, for example, pantha, that means way or path. Do jugdha, daidhat tho, for example, buddhi, which means intelligence. Mastery of clusters is important for correct reading and writing in Assamese. Let's see a few of the other clusters. I will show you each step on the screen. Dainta no and dainta no, noinan no. Dainta to and ra, toiret ra. Dainta no and mo, noiman mo. Dainta do and ra, doiret ra. Say aloud and take a pause for repetition. No, tra, no, draw. Practice speaking with me. No and no, noinan no. For example, onna, which means meal. Ta and ra, toiret ra. For example, gotra, that means lineage. Daintan no, zug mo, noiman mo. For example, janmo, which means birth. Dainta do and ra, doiret ra. For example, bhadra, that means gentle. Let's find clusters in some more words. Look at the examples on the screen and read the words with clusters aloud. Padma, which means lotus. Lojja, that means same. Zugma, which means joint or a pair. Hanta, that means come. Praja, which means citizen. Namra, that means polite. So, thank you for joining. Practice every day and you will become a master in Assamese Juktaikar. See you in the next class. Thank you.